Hello guys, it's Mikefield here again. We'll be talking about Restoration, Shaman, and Raiding today. We'll cover the basics and the advanced stuff. So we'll try to optimize your play. I'll tell you how exactly you can improve your healing per second, how you can improve your stats, and how you can effectively keep your team alive, which is probably the most important bit in playing raids. So we'll go through spells and cooldowns, talents, covenants, legendaries, conduits, consumables and gear, log analysis, and we'll very briefly mention the macros, AddOns, and such. But guys, remember there's a special video I made for that. It is also linked in the description, so please go there for your own convenience. Now, if you guys are enjoying yourselves, please remember to subscribe to the channel, drop me a follow on Twitch, link here, like the video, comment below, and yeah, just I hope you guys will find this video interesting and cool. Let's get started. Alright folks, we'll start with the basics, and this is super important. Probably if you can keep this bit in check, you'll be getting like 80% of your healing output from the get-go. So let's just kind of see what exactly we have here. So first of all, Earth Shield on the tank means it's easier for you to heal them in emergency situations. Also, they heal a little bit every time they're damaged. Do not underestimate this ability. You should get a recover for this. Then Water Shield on yourself, same deal. It should definitely not go off you unless you just take some added damage, but it's very important that you use your Water Shield and you keep it active, because this is your major mana regen source. If you do not have your Water Shield active, you will most likely run out of mana during the longer encounters, and raid encounters tend to be rather long and mana intensive, so it's very important. It's a good piece of advice, I believe, to just keep the Water Shield on yourself at all times. And now comes the most, absolutely the most vital bit ever for every Restoration Shaman in Raid. You have two cooldowns, or two abilities actually, that have to be active at absolutely maximum time frame. We have Cloudburst and Healing Rain. Those two abilities will be always up. If you do not keep them up, you're basically making your healing very low. You're naturally just getting worse healing output, and your team might just die because the encounters are tailored around, raid healers doing maximum possible healing. So, especially if you're undergeared, but generally speaking, this is just good practice. Make sure you keep track of your Cloudburst uptime and your Healing Rain uptime. Healing Rain will be healing 6 targets at maximum per tick, but still you should be just trying to keep it, on the biggest number of people possible, so it kind of targets the nice people that you want to have healed. And again, Cloudburst will collect all that healing into itself and drop it at the end. Now, Cloudburst, as I said, is a longer cooldown, so it might actually be not available for, those 5-10 second time frames throughout the raid, but whenever it becomes available again, and you are healing at that given moment, it's not like some wonky phase where you're not healing, you should always just make sure that Cloudburst is on the battlefield alongside your healing ranges, helping your people. There'll be certain fights that require a lot of movement, and this means you have to predict where you place your healing rains, because, for instance, in the Sun King battle, for instance, you will definitely need to move your team during the shade phases, which actually means that your rain perhaps will be not as important as per usual. So you obviously have to adjust, but generally speaking, rule of thumb is during those most stationary periods of the encounters, keep your healing rain active. And that's it for the base. Now, obviously, there is some more stuff to it. So once your healing rain is down, you have several choices as to what you're gonna do next within, this time frame before you need to cast it again. So the most important bit is to use your Riptide. Your Riptide will basically be your core healing ability. It will usually provide the highest healing output throughout the raid encounters, and it is extremely important to just use it every single time you have it off cooldown. So you should have 2 stacks of this due to your talent choices. So you should, generally speaking, just be using your Riptide, and if you still have the time to, use another healing spell before the rain has to be cast again, or the totem, the Cloudburst, has to be cast again, you should be using your Chain Heal most likely. If there is a situation in the fight where people have taken a lot of burst damage, but you do not want to pop your major cooldowns, you can always just use the classic, Mythic Dungeon combo, which is Cloudburst into Riptide into a Primordial Wave into popping your Cloudburst. This is always going to be just a very efficient use of cooldowns. You should obviously be using your Primordial Wave as often as possible, so this is kind of something that was also like your staple cast, and is very useful just to be doing this. I'm just gonna show you what exactly I mean now. Let's have a look. Hey guys, so let's see what exactly I mean by what I said so far. So basically your initial combo is going to be your Healing Rain, which as you can see is a nice weak aura for me here that tells me when I should be using it. So basically every single time it is off cooldown, it tells me, you know, please drop it by shining. So here we go, we drop the Healing Rain, we drop the Cloudburst Totem, and then we drop our Riptide, and by that time we can probably stick in a single chain heal, and our Healing Rain comes off cooldown, we drop it once again. And that's basically the ideal combo for you. You should obviously be making sure that you transition your Air Shield from target to target, and that your Cloudburst Totem uptime is optimized as well. But as long as you can keep track of those things, you should be pretty much golden. Now, it's very important that you kind of keep track of those basic things before you go into the more advanced stuff, such as, for instance, you know, getting the correct combo down with your Healing Rain, with your Cloudburst Totem, and with your Primordial Wave and Riptide. So you can just drop this, I can heal myself as well. I have like mouse over macro here, so I'm just doing this. Obviously I'd be using the raid frames otherwise, and then I can just use my Healing Wave on, let's say this is a tank that is ailing. You can see I just did like a huge burst of healing across the board. Very important that you kind of keep doing this. So this being said, guys, those combos will definitely allow you to keep your party topped up in those easier encounters, but obviously you have like a very large assortment of extra abilities that you should be keeping for those very particular moments in fights. So let's get started with that bit as well. Let's see what they are and how they should be used. So as I've already said, those basic cooldowns, they're basically expendable, but there are like a lot of things that you should be paying attention to and keeping for particular moments during the fights. And this is something that many people fail at. Like this is probably the biggest pain point for a lot of players, because they do not know the encounters, they do not understand when they should be using their cooldowns, and this means they just do not kind of help their team at the time when it is needed. So generally speaking, you should be just, you know, going through your encounters at normal pace, and you should be just basically, when you do it for the first time, you should be paying attention to when your team drops to lower HP values, and you should be, you know, just using your cooldowns accordingly. If you wipe in an encounter like 2 or 3 times, by that moment you'll probably know what exactly you need to improve upon and what skills you need to use at what times so that your team is healthy. So let's for instance take the very basic fight against Shriekwing, during which, you know, he'll be using the Blood Wave every minute, and you can just basically time it. So whenever he casts it, you can use your Earthwall Totem, you can use your Wellspring, right? So those abilities will definitely just be short cooldowns that counter what is happening. Every single fight will have those things, you know, phase 3 of Huntsman, Ultimore will probably require you to use Healing Tide Totem at the very start when the beast starts moving for the first time, because your players should probably be rather unhealthy, and this will again alleviate a lot of pain points. Now, you should just study the fights. I'll be making guides about raiding as Resto Shaman, but generally speaking, what I'm telling you from my experience is, you know, especially that, you know, I am on Mythic raid tier right now, we're on the 3rd boss, so we're going to take it down this weekend, I hope. So what I can tell you right now is that timing your cooldowns is extremely important. And obviously, if your team is not as competent, you can definitely alleviate a lot of those issues that your team is having by just using your cooldowns properly. So really important, let's go over them. So Spirit Link will be, generally speaking, useful because it is, first of all, a damage share ability, and second of all, it is a damage reduction ability. So it will actually allow you to reduce the damage, for instance, during the Slash Fist slam. So whenever he slams the pillar, before he does so, you can drop your Spirit Link at one of those pillars. It's a very good damage reduction tool. You should probably communicate with the other healers in your team, but this is definitely going to help you a lot. Again, Healing Tide. So this is this kind of critical recovery tool. You are going to be able to use this ability probably like twice per fight. So usually I use it early on in the fight just to kind of keep everybody topped up during the more desperate moments during phase 1. So for instance, Castle Nathria's fight on Heroic did require us to use those Healing Tide totems when the ads were spawning to just prevent the incoming damage. And then you can use it during those more difficult bits of, say, phase 3. So again, the Nathrius here comes into play, and you have the Healing Tide totem available for phase 3 when, again, damage becomes very high, and you need to make sure that you are also doing some damage yourself, because, you know, this is basically a DPS check. So it's a good idea to use the Healing Tide then. You will basically realize when you need those cooldowns after 1 wipe or 2, but generally speaking, just make sure you do not arbitrarily use them when everyone is fully topped up, because this will just not work. Then you have some minor healing cooldowns. Those are, you know, 20, 30 seconds up to a minute for the Airwall totem. And all of those abilities are quite expendable, just that you should be using them when, again, like a larger portion of damage comes down. So Wellspring 20-second cooldown. Bosses will be usually casting some unavoidable AoE spell every 30 seconds to a minute. You can just time this Wellspring so that it counters that directly. It's very useful just because it's such a low cooldown and we have decent stats, like if you're like around 190 to 200 item level and above, it actually heals for a lot. Before that, I would say Ascendancy might be a better choice for Shamans, but when you are like nicely geared up, you don't need like this desperate healing. Wellspring will actually do quite a decent job at keeping everyone topped up and steady. Also, Wellspring is good if you're raiding with a team rather than with a pack, because this is something that organized teams will benefit from more, because you do not need that much desperate healing because people will be making naturally fewer mistakes, whereas at the very same time it just provides a decent healing output throughout the fight if used efficiently. Now, another bit is obviously the Earthen Wall. It is a 1 minute cooldown. Again, you can use it to absorb a lot of damage when you know it's coming. So it's good to have, for instance, bigwigs or deadly boss mods, those bars that show you when the big cooldown is coming. So when boss does like this huge bit of unavoidable damage, you can basically prevent it by dropping Earthen Wall Totem preemptively. So this is a very useful raid ability again, so I'd say you should always use this. And we did mention Primordial Wave. It is pretty expendable. I think you should treat it first and foremost as an additional Riptide, but you should obviously always follow it up with your Healing Wave, because this is a nice combo that just allows you to get some extra healing to the people who need this. For instance, during the Huntsman Ultim or on Mythic, there is like a lot of bleeding on the targets who are targeted by the arrows, so it's very important that you do actually use this and then Healing Wave, so you can drop this combo, then drop the Healing Wave, and you will definitely top your people up and make sure they don't just arbitrarily die. And this is basically that, guys, for the longer cooldowns. This is that. So now this is the time to talk about the support cooldowns, and there are quite a few of them. Once again, we have the Windrush Totem, which is optional, obviously, Spirit Walker's Grace, Astral Shift, Mana Tide Totem, Heroism, and just doing damage, which is a form of supporting your team as well. So Windrush Totem is usually used in those more mobile fights where you need your team to move very quickly. You can, obviously, if you have like enough Druids, you can use Roar instead, but Windrush Totem will actually facilitate a lot. For instance, Mythic Shriekwing, which is a very easy fight with Windrush Totem, will definitely, again, benefit from this. So you can support your team with this. It's just a matter of choosing it for the right fights. There are obviously some nice alternatives in this talent show, which we'll talk about later. So it's not compulsory, but I would say it's a very decent ability to have. Now we have Spirit Walker's Grace. Again, there are certain fights which require you to move and cast. For instance, the Shade of Kel'Thas fight, so Sun King's Vault, right? It's again very nice, a very nice idea to be using Spirit Walker's Grace when there is the Shade of Kel'Thas phase, because this allows you to move, adjust to the situation during the fight, at the very same time dish out a decent amount of healing. Finally, Astral Shift is something that you should use to prevent incoming damage, and Mana Tide Totem should be used at, let's say about 80% maximum mana, so that you can use it twice per fight to make sure that during the last phase, that usually will require most healing and most, mana expenditures, you still are able to provide healing to your team. Now, and we have some support cooldowns in the end, so Heroism, which is obviously staple, but you have a lot of classes that can be using this very commonly or frequently. You have like 2 Shamans on your team, so this is something you have to agree upon, and it's important that you know when you're supposed to be using this. So for instance, we usually save this for those crucial moments in the fights, like when the last phase pops, so that we can just deal with this last phase as soon as possible. Obviously, some encounters will actually be promoting the use of this ability earlier, but this is something that is very encounter specific. Now, finally, dealing damage is a very important bit as well for some fights. At the very least, the DPS check fights will definitely benefit from you doing damage. So you'll be able to kind of support your team by basically dropping the Flame Shock and using your Surge, Lava Burst as well when needed. So that's basically that. It's very important that you keep track of those abilities and use them when you have downtime, when you do not really need to be doing any healing. Obviously, if you do overgear a fight as well, it's very good to be doing damage instead of just kind of dropping your heals into the vacuum, right? So that's another very important bit. And now to the talents. And talents are actually kind of different from what you would expect from a mythic dungeon run, perhaps. So I actually do believe that Torrent is the superior of this row. I did actually not agree with this before. In my first video about Resto Shaman, I said, Torrent probably not the best ability, but honestly, if you are actually using this cooldown efficiently, if you just kind of use it off cooldown every single time, and if you do have your Primal Tide core, it is so good. It just is extremely good. Primordial Wave obviously works with it in tandem, so it is really good for raid healing, keeping everybody topped up. It will just mean that, your extra healing from Riptide, which is going to be your core single target healing ability, is just, a teeny tiny bit higher. Over time, this will actually amount to something magnificent. So I would say Torrent, very solid ability altogether. Then, second row, there is no competition here. Echo of the Elements allows you to use your Riptide efficiently, allows you to use your Cloudburst totem efficiently. I really don't think there is competition here. You should just be using this. This is definitely a no-brainer. Now, in the third row, unless there are like some ads that you want to control, I think a Spirit Wolf is just the best because it allows you to move faster and get some damage reduction during those more mobile phases of the fight. You should obviously be using your Ghost Wolf at your own convenience when you need to move fast and perhaps avoid some damage as well, right? So during all those movement phases, this is a very useful talent, and it should probably be taken above these two. Obviously, if your team lacks some CC, for instance, in, again, the Sun King's Vault, you can definitely be using your Earth Grab Totem or Static Charge instead. Just make sure your cooldowns are lower, or that you have like this additional CC tool available to yourself. Now, this row is, I think this is a no-brainer for raids. Earthen Wall is just something that if you know the raid encounters well enough, you should be using this just to make sure that, a little bit less damage comes through. It is not that much healing, obviously. It just absorbs 35, 34k, depending on your stats, obviously. But it's not too much in the bigger picture. However, if you take into consideration that you're preventing damage by just dropping a single GCD every minute, it's actually quite decent. It will be rather high on your healing meters as well. Let's see if I do have it here. Yeah, it's like at the very bottom, see, like 5.5% of my total healing has been done by Earthen Wall, which is not terrible, honestly. It's not bad at all. And this was a mythic Hungering the Destroyer, so it did actually quite a bit of work there. Now, so you can obviously take Ancestral Protection if you do not have any other combat reses on your team, but you should definitely not be one responsible for this. So it's a, emergency talent pick, but it is here, but I would generally speaking say that Earthen Wall will probably do the job a bit better. Now, finally, plus obviously this is a 5-minute cooldown, so usually once per fight is not really gonna suffice. This is, you can use it like 10 times per fight if the encounter is longer. So I would just say Earthen Wall is a superior ability. Yeah. Now, from this row, we basically have 3 very solid choices. If you're pagging, I think Nature's Guardian is good because nobody will take care of you, so you can just kind of keep yourself healthy by just picking this ability. However, in the raid encounters, certain ones at least, you will need some extra mobility for your team. You have druids who can roar, but obviously, again, it's a cooldown that they use and they don't have for later. So if you do need to move, in the Nathria's fight once again, in the Hungering Destroyer fight as well, there are quite a few of those boss fights that will require your team to transition from one place to another very quickly, and this will help them very nicely to just organize. So if you're on one of those more coordinated fight teams, then I think this is a very solid totem and a very solid ability to have all together. Finally, Graceful Spirit, very good ability for certain things once again. It's not ultimately the best for every single piece of content, but you'll definitely find its uses. So this will basically allow your Spirit Walker's Grace to be a shorter cooldown, and it will also grant you extra movement speed. For Sire Nathria's fight, this was a godsend. I'm telling you, like for Heroic Sire Nathria's, this ability actually just helped me so much to deal with those phases where ammonia starts striking the ground, slicing it up, and you actually need to move, but you still need to be healing because otherwise people start dying. Using this actually just saves a lot of lives. Very solid totem for that particular encounter. Now, Cloudburst totem, again, I'm gonna say it's a no-brainer, whatever people say. It is just so good, especially that you are actually consistently healing with Healing Rain in those encounters. So I think this is just the best ability you can have. Probably the most valuable skill in your Shaman kit. So I would say Cloudburst, really solid stuff. Always take it, always use it. And yeah, it's just also automatically cast. It releases all the healing automatically after 15 seconds if you do not activate it manually. You can also do this manually if you see someone is dying and you have like nothing else available, like a last resort ability. This can actually help your team as well. Very solid stuff. Finally, Ascendance versus Wellspring. Ascendance is good for pagging for normal difficulty rating, whereas Wellspring, if you're nicely geared, you're like around, as I said, 190, 200 item power, this will actually become a very solid healing output ability. I would say always take it for those situations, just to make sure that your team is topped up and happy. So this is a very consistent heal if you just use it, off cooldown basically, or if you kind of time it very nicely with, what is happening during the raid, you will definitely just be getting a very decent chunk of value from this. So talent's done. That's it. I really have nothing else to say here. I would say Ascendance is very solid talent for normal, or when your team already has like a lot of consistent healing, but Wellspring will definitely, once you're like nicely geared, take a lead in terms of healing per second. As you can see here, I have like 10.7%, and another Shaman healer has 10.7% healing done by this ability alone. So it's very solid, very consistent. I would say use this one over Ascendance if you know that you can trust your team. And this basically clears this bit up. Let's move on to the second part, which is Legendaries, Covenants, and your Guys, this is going to be real quick because we did say this before. I'm going to go back and reiterate. It's very important that you pick Necrolords if you want to be super efficient, but it is not going to be a game changer. So if you do decide to pick Venthyr, be my guest, right? But I'm going to say straight away that for raid healing, for all the synergies that you have, that's actually going to be quite a meaningful amount of healing that you can just deal or do for your team with the Necrolord Covenant. So we'll be going with Primal Tidecoat, which is the staple legendary for raiding, simply because it's just a very nice synergy with Riptide. And again, Necrolords give you additional synergy with Riptide by the Primordial Wave, which is a 45-second cooldown, spammable, allows you to AoE heal your team, and just kind of works very nicely with all the stuff you have going for yourself. So if you do follow my build, with the Torrent talent, I think this is going to be optimal for your healing output. However, as I said, going with Venthyr is also a nice possibility. This being said, going forward from here, let's go into the conduits. And Swirling Currents are huge because, again, synergy with Riptide is out there. So you have the Torrent that gives you extra healing. Now you also have Swirling Currents. You will probably be able to stick about 2 Riptides per, or 3 Riptides per Cloudburst totem cast. So this is actually very useful for you. Just basically works very nicely with what you already have going for yourself. So importantly, this just will give you so much extra healing for basically 0 effort. Since this is just a part of your usual rotation anyway, right? So this is a no-brainer. Now, since this week, you're also able to unlock your second conduit slot with Marolev. That's why we have chosen her over many. Once you are able to unlock this, I think this is going to be a slightly better choice simply because of Lead by Example, which gives you some extra intelligence and also improves your allies' stats at the very same time. So it's a very useful buff for those kind of bursts of very short bursts of time where you can use this. So, every 45 seconds, then you can just use Primordial Wave to get some extra stats, improve your healing a little bit. Can work in those more desperate situations to save or salvage some fights. Now, importantly though, the second conduit slot, potency conduit slot, will be going with, I would say you should be going with Heavy Rainfall, simply because it just is very good synergy for your Healing Tide Totem. Because Healing Tide Totem is usually dropped when you are in a desperate situation already. So it is something like, a lot of AoE just comes through, deals a lot of damage to your team. Think phase 3 of Huntsman Ultimore, for instance, on Mythic, where there is just so much damage that you need to kind of mitigate it one way or another. And it is very important, for instance, that you use this conduit here, because it will just give you some extra healing. You can use your healing ring twice because this is 20 seconds, so you can cast healing ring twice for double the efficiency. Really useful stuff. You'll just basically make sure that your team is nicely topped up. It is actually something that should not be underestimated, I think, in the raid context. When you look at the other possibilities, I do think Tumbling Waves might be a good thing, actually, because 25 seconds not to incur a cooldown is decent, but it is RNG, right? This is super reliable. It actually has very clear-cut window of use. So when your team is down on HP, you drop your Healing Tide Totem, you drop your Healing Rain, everyone is happy and topped up. Now, if you use this, you can use your Primordial Wave. It can give you like another one at a moment in time when you don't really need it at all. right? So obviously this can be very solid, but I do believe the RNG is not something that you want in raid. You want consistency, right? So this is the most consistent of the pack. Healing from Earth Shield is 7%. No, thank you. I mean, this is good for healing tanks, but you as a shaman, you're probably not gonna be healing tanks, right? So you'll be keeping your shield on the tank, but this is not such an important ability altogether that you should be emphasizing this in raids. Maybe if you get like additional potency conduit in the future, this could be a consideration. Right now I really don't think so. Finally, Nature's Reach is pretty solid because it's a chain heal for the primary targets if you're healing the tank, and the melees around, this will actually help you quite a bit. Also, if you're healing someone who is low HP and it chains to other people around, this will also give you some extra healing. It's not that big though. I would say go, obviously prioritize Swelling Currents. When you can unlock the second potency, go Heavy Rainfall, see what happens from there. I would say definitely like for those fights that require you to heal up your team in those very important bursts of damage, which is your job because you are going to be a raid healer, this is just going to pay extremely huge dividends and therefore should be prioritized. And this is basically it for conduits, guys. Let's go into gear and those basics related. So as far as gearing goes, guys, it's important that you just prioritize item level. I think this is the most important bit because everything that you get will basically either increase your HP, so your survivability, meaning that you can last longer in fights, or your intelligence, which is again like your most important stats. So your intellect is going to be super valuable and it should be always prioritized. Now, if you do heal raids, you should definitely understand that there are two very important stats. So I would say crit and versatility, right? Because crit is just going to increase your healing output overall. It's a bit of RNG, but not really. So definitely crit is just going to be super valuable for your overall healing. And then versatility, once again, simply speaking, just increases your healing done by 12% and decreases the damage you take. So two very important bits that you want to have as a shaman. So if you look at the stats of other shamans who are like, high in the mythic, and they have the possibility to actually optimize more, to pick their stat, they are definitely going to be, kind of leaning towards crit and versatility. However, as a normal shaman, if you're just a regular Joe, you should probably just prioritize on improving your items as much as possible and then just prioritizing the stats once you have the maximum possible achievable item level. So that's basically what I'm going to say here about the gear. Let's go into consumables now. And consumables are very basic once again. We did talk about this before, so I'm going to just kind of reiterate a little bit. So for raids, I think Stake a la Mode is going to be a decently cheap and solid option. However, usually in raids, people will be using Feasts, so you do not have to worry about this at all. So Feast will be giving you Intellect instead, and this is such a solid stat that you really should not be worrying about anything else. So that's it. Now, Spectral Flasks of Power got cheaper. They are like 1k each now. They give you 70 intelligence boost. Very important for raids because, as I said before, this just statistically gives you a little bit more healing over time. 70 intellect is very big overall. Obviously, Embalmer's Oil goes in tandem with your Potion of Divine Awakening. So this is like, again, Desperation healing ability. If you need some extra healing at those, breakthrough phases where a lot of damage just comes through and you're not able to heal through it normally, you should probably just pop it and pray that somehow it saves your life. This actually is pretty good for, as I said, this desperation healing. You can use it twice per fight. I would say use it at least once, during phase 3, for instance, of Castle Nathria, or when you see that your team is struggling and you can actually just eke out some extra healing with this. It will be very useful altogether. Embalmer's Oil gives you some healing to yourself, so if you heal an ally, you heal yourself a little bit as well. It's pretty useful. I'm not gonna say it's just kind of groundbreaking or anything, because that would be a lie, but it is good. Again, comes into play when you use Potion of Divine Awakening as well, because this is gonna just be extra 10% healing. So yeah, pretty decent stuff. Finally, Heavy Desolate Armor Kits. For those higher end raids, like last bosses of Heroic and which are usually like DPS/health checks, right? These will actually be very good, and obviously for Mythic raiding, they are, again, almost compulsory, I would say, because they just give you extra 32 stamina, and this is more HP. This means that you are less likely to die. Not dying is good, right? I really don't have to stress this. So I think this is something that you should invest in if you are like higher end raider and you want to benefit from that. Now, Augment runes still very expensive. I use it when I know that my team just needs a little bit extra oomph and we're like about to beat a mythic boss. I do use them occasionally, but generally speaking would say if you're super rich, use them. If you're not super rich, you don't have to. I'd say, 18 intellect is not that big of a deal. Potions are very big though. So potions are going to be, again, like always use these. And this is basically the same rule as with your mana tide totem. So your spiritual mana potion should be used early so you can use it for the second time later in the fight. This means that you are always going to be at decently high mana, and you will be able to keep healing despite, higher mana expenditures in those longer fights that take place. So very important that you carry these, that you try to use them efficiently. Same goes obviously for your mana tide, just because it is such an important skill to make sure that you just have enough resources to keep your team up at all times. Again, spiritual healing potion, 5-minute cooldown. If you drop to low HP and all your allies are low HP as well, better idea to just pop the potion and heal your allies and heal yourself and then heal your allies, right? So you basically just save a couple of DCDs here. Instead of just getting yourself up to decent HP, you just use the potion, use your health stone, whatever else you have at your disposal, and you just use your cooldowns on your allies instead, because this is your job. You're the healer, right? You're not supposed to be healing yourself. So in all those situations where you would normally be healing yourself, you probably just pop the potion once at least, and this will just give you some extra healing output that you can use to help your team. Very important again. And guys, that's gonna be it for the gear and consumables. Okay, so the final bit is how to improve your healing, how to optimize, right? We're gonna have a look at a few options that you have basically, and we'll try to explore them. First of all, I would say you should be using Details Damage Meter. There's another video that I made about UIs, weak auras, all the stuff that you need as a healer. But here we are with the Details add-on, and this actually allows you to compare your healing, so this is me, to other players in the raid. Usually, you have like 4 to 5 healers per encounter, and you can directly see what you did compared to your allies. So if there's like another resto shaman in that fight, you can see what exactly brought you above them in that given encounter. So you have the Hungering Destroyer, I think. Yeah, this is Hungering Destroyer encounter, pull 47, which we failed by kind of a decently low amount of HP. I think it was like 20% HP left on the boss. And you can see exactly how much healing you did, healing per second, and what the sources were. So you can compare your healing. So let's see, for instance, here I did like 1.4k healing with Riptide to another shaman. This guy was usually ahead of me, so he did 1.1k. So if someone is above you, you can see exactly what they did in order to get above you in there. Obviously, dying means that your HPS naturally drops down, but generally speaking, if you both stayed alive until the end of the encounter, this is a very good indicator of what your ally was doing, to kind of get better than you in terms of HPS. So you can see, for instance, like our healing rains did very similar amount of healing, our Cloudburst totems did very similar amount of healing, yada, yada, yada. So really, it will allow you to break down your similarities and differences depending on the encounter you're in. Now, another very useful tool, however, is going to be the WoW Analyzer that we're going to go into right now. So if you want to just see how exactly you pan out against the competition, WoW Analyzer is going to be such an excellent tool. That will definitely help you a lot. So wowanalyzer.com, link in the description, is the tool I've been talking about, and it actually allows you to see what exactly your healing is compared to the rest of the player base, all the other resto shamans who did actually complete this encounter. It also allows you to analyze your logs quite in depth, right? So if you may have heard of the infamous parses, and we'll just kind of try to see what exactly you can do to easily analyze them without just getting too much into the details there. So you type in your server, you type in character name, my shaman is Insana, so you just click there, and you can see that you have several metrics here, such as HPS and DPS. You can sort by date, by bosses, and by raid. We're going to be looking at Castle Nathria performance and my atrocious healing results in Shaman Nathria's encounter recently. So basically, guys, this website just shows you what exactly you need to be doing in order to get better, because it always will show you what percentile of healers you're in, and then it will also allow you to assess, what cooldowns were not used by you, and so on and so forth. So importantly here, you can basically click on any of those encounters and see what sort of healing you were using and how you were like optimal or suboptimal in what you were doing. That percentage here tells you like how good you are compared to that player base. So if it says, for instance, 80%, 81% here, I was like top 19% healer in the Council of Blood encounter among all the encounters done by resto shamans up to the date. So it's kind of a decent result, right? You can see basically like all your encounters that you were doing. Obviously, you have to remember also that HPS is not the only metric that comes into play, because for instance, like if your team is just stomping boss encounters, you might not even want to be doing healing. You might want to be doing damage. So if you click DPS here, you will see that in a lot of those fights where I had like very low healing output, I actually did very good DPS as well, right? So since we had like no need for extra healing in Heroic because our team is just slightly overgeared and we just know the encounters very well, I was doing decent DPS, you know, barring the terrible Slash Fist fight where I was like super stressed and I was just trying to keep myself and my team alive. So obviously, as I said, HPS not the only metric, but this tool will help you to analyze what you're doing, because you can click the encounter, let's say the Slash Fist, the infamous Slash Fist one, where I did decent healing, low DPS. You click it and it just analyzes your parses, so it just sees what exactly you were doing and what you did wrong. So first of all, it will tell you, for instance, if you were efficient with your spells. So for instance, my Cloudburst totem uptime was 100%, so I used it every time, picture perfect, every single time I could. Very decent stuff, right? Again, it will tell you, for instance, Primordial Wave. I didn't use it as much as I could have, 50% of the time only, so this is definitely something I can improve upon. Healing Rain. This fight included some movement, so this is why I was not sometimes able to finish my channels, but again, definitely something I can just get better at. Riptide, same deal, you can do this while moving, right? So if you have 75% here, not the greatest stat in the world, it's okay, but not perfect. Right, it will tell you again about your major cooldown. So my mana type totem, for instance, I could have definitely used it more frequently than I did. You can drop it twice per fight, even in Slash Fist fight, so I definitely forgot about this one. I did drop my Spirit Link twice there, so this is 100% time usage. And my Healing Tide totem was used when the team needed healing the most, so again, this statistic isn't that telling, right? Your targeting with AoE spells, so you know whether those were efficient or not, you could probably... in that particular fight, I don't think you can time it better than this, but obviously there are some openings as well. For Roar, for instance, that is used that you can probably shield with Earthen Wall more accurately than I did. Keeping your buffs up here, I kept the Earth Shield most of the time, but again, not perfect, and I didn't use it pre-pool, because we did like a few pools, I think. I was like a bit tired at that point, but again, I definitely can improve that bit. Using the potions, right? So, no, being inactive, right? It's the time of inactivity, so when you're not healing, when you're not using cooldowns, right? My downtime here is rather high, actually 35%, but the fight does involve like some movement here and there, and there are like some interruptions, so this is something you can kind of take into consideration as well. Obviously, if your downtime is very large, so it goes like red, this means that you should definitely be casting more. So you should never be idle during your fights, you should be just always casting stuff. Now using mana efficiently, again, mana left 7.6%, meant like I was using my mana almost as well as possible, because boss was at 0% HP when my mana was at 7, so I was basically using all the mana I could have. Finally being prepared, so potions here, this doesn't matter because I did not use my healing, my combat potion, but I did actually use a high quality? No, actually, okay, so I did not use my combat potion that encounter, so I could have definitely done better. Then enchantments also could use some work. I think I may have missed out on one of the enchantments there. Maybe I got like a new ring during the run and I just didn't have it applied. Right, so then it gives you all the suggestions, right? So minor and major importance. So mana type totem was an issue for me. I probably didn't make use of this as well, so the tidal waves. And finally, my ring was missing an enchantment, right? So it's kind of important as well. So see, this is exactly what I said. And finally, like some minor things as well. You know, casting Astral Shift, I didn't do this. I should have, right? My Healing Rain, I could have casted more. You know, it just gives you like a lot of different pieces of advice that you can definitely use to optimize your play. So it's kind of a good, nice tool for people just learning their class. And it allows you to kind of get a lot of insight through minimal effort. You get like additional stats over here as well that you can, you know, watch the timeline of the fight. So you can see when you use the spells, when the damage came down and such. It's kind of useful as well. And you can see the statistics as well that you had, right? So for instance, 0 DPS is absolutely pathetic. I don't know how I did this, but I was just kind of doing my darnest in terms of healing. At the very same time, though, I was not doing damage. So it's kind of important that you try to at least leave the flame shock here and there. And you can obviously see some... I can learn from this, right? So anyone can, obviously. Basically, you can just take a lot of information out of this and just try to improve yourself. That's very, very solid tool. I would definitely recommend you use this. And finally, before we conclude the video, just remember I have additional video on weak auras and such, and UI setup as well for your raiding. So I would definitely say go there, check it out, and enjoy. Let's go to the conclusions then. Guys, this is gonna be it for today. Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy yourselves, remember, subscribe to the channel, click the like button, and comment to tell me what you think. If you guys do actually feel generous, if you're feeling generous right now, you can also click the join button to give me $3 per month and allow my channel to grow and improve. Also, huge thanks to all of you who did that already. So you guys are absolutely amazing. The names are on the screen. You're just such an amazing crowd, people. Thank you so much. I probably wouldn't be streaming and producing content had it not been for you. This being said, I hope you people stay safe, stay healthy, and keep dropping by for future content that I will be producing. This being said, see you around.